Alrighty, so News of the Week episode on this Saturday evening, and this News of the Week is definitely going to be shorter than what I did on Thursday because, obviously we had a lot of news to talk about on Thursday, and unsurprisingly, there isn't going to be as much news I'm going to talk about on Saturday, considering it's only been 2 days since I did that massive News of the Week episode on Thursday. But that being said, the biggest news of these last couple of days actually happened this morning. So it seems like there is another big twist of the tale in the Duncan Mcguire transfer saga, as Tom Bogert has reported that his transfer to Blackburn Rovers is on verge of collapse again due to an error with registration and paperwork. Now, this is not the first time I've seen this has happened. Obviously, I think the most famous event that is related to that is the David De Gea situation of how he was on his way to move to Real Madrid, but then it seems like both Man United and Real Madrid had problem with the fax machine, and by the time they fixed that issue, the transfer window was already shut. So yeah, that was definitely one of the biggest error and one of the biggest gap we have ever seen in the world of transfer. But that being said, this is definitely going to be similar to that, especially with the way that, Orlando City have already said that they have bid their goodbyes to Duncan Mcguire. They literally posted that they thanked Duncan Mcguire in his year of service last season with the team. And Duncan Mcguire himself already posted a picture of him in a Blackburn Rovers jersey. So imagine that you did all that, and now all of a sudden, looks like this move is not going to happen. I mean, this is, I got a feel for Duncan Mcguire. And, you never like to see a player that is on the verge of making a big move to Europe and maybe even getting a dream to play in Europe only for some problem with the registration and paperwork as a result of that. And keep in mind, the European transfer window did close just a couple of days ago. So this is going to be interesting to see how it's going to sort out. Are we going to have a similar situation to the David De Gea situation? And if this move does not made. I mean, the good news for Orlando City is that at least they get to keep Duncan Mcguire, and that, how I said in my season preview about Orlando City and the holes that they need to fill, it feels like that's pretty much invalid if they are going to keep Duncan Mcguire. But that being said, the thing that I would also say that could be interesting about him is that how is this going to affect his performance in terms of heading into the second season, because this is pretty damaging in terms of affecting a players when you're about to make your dream move to Europe, and then because of last minute because of paperwork issue, and not to mention you look like you were on the verge of joining the club, even did the pose of you holding the jersey of the new team that you're going to be playing, and now it's not going to happen. That can be very devastating for a player's psyche. And that, this also kind of happened to Lucio Acosta a couple of years ago. I mean, I mentioned about the Lucio Acosta situation of how he was so close of joining PSG and then he didn't join the team. And even though we know Lucio Acosta, of course, doing very well with FC Cincinnati, after that transfer window where he had that failed move to PSG, he really had a dip of performance in the very next year with DC United, and I'm just hoping that's not going to be the same case with Duncan Mcguire, because he's a guy that, again, he has a lot of talent in his head. If he can keep up the performance that he had in his rookie season carry into the second year, there's going to be a bigger team that is looking to try to get him. And I'll also go back to what I said, that I'm kind of surprised that Orlando City and Duncan Mcguire decided to think that this is he's going to go to Europe really quickly and almost kind of following the same footstep of Daryl DK. I mean, when the opportunity is there, you of course want to take it, but I also thought that he could have had another year with Orlando City, and again, it feels like it might be the case now, but it's definitely not the way I thought that he was going to be staying with Orlando City in his second season. So yeah, more news, of course, will follow that. The next news week episode, I'll probably talk more about that, because Blackburn Rovers have also said that within 48 hours they'll talk about what's going to happen with this move and whether or not if this is going to be completed. Now, the New York Red Bulls, they have named Julian de Guzman, and actually it's Julian de Guzman because it is his Hispanic name, as the new sporting director of the team. Now, before you ask, who? Yeah, that's pretty much is my response to, because again, this is a guy that he has no history in terms of being a sporting director at any of the top tier. From what I heard, it seems like he was kind of like a sporting director in the lower tier in the Canadian game. But yeah, this is going to be interesting of him being in this job, and that again, the unpredictability could be interesting where you could find a guy that turns out to do well and know what he's doing, or it could end disastrously where you can get a guy that had no idea what he's doing. He has never had the position of being a sporting director, and it's going to fail miserably for the New York Red Bulls. And it feels like it's kind of more leaning toward that standpoint because again, when you decide to hire a guy that has a lot has no experience in this field and has inexperience, most of the time it ends terribly. But we'll see whether or not if this, of course, would work out for the Red Bulls. But moving on in terms of the next news, and now talk about some signings. I'm gonna kind of go rapid fire in terms of this because some of these signings we already knew it was going to happen. So as I mentioned before, after the or actually during when I was doing the news of the week episode, I mentioned LAFC was already dropping hints that they're going to make another signing on their Twitter page. Well, it seems like it is that signing is Venezuelan forward David Martinez as they officially acquire him. And as I mentioned before, he's a very promising player coming out of Venezuela, and I think LAFC have a really good player on their hand in their future. And then the same goes for NYCFC, who for a long time they've been looking to try to acquire Augustine Ojeda, and let's take a bit for them to officially make it an official signing, but it finally did today, as he of course have now joined NYCFC from Racing Club. And then the same goes for DC United, where they signed Finnish midfielder Matti Patola, and I even mentioned the fact that they even sent some game to Minnesota United because of the discovery rights, because that kind of makes sense. I mean, Minnesota is gonna obviously have discovery rights all out of all the Finnish players that is out there. I mean, there's a reason why they call them Finnesota for a reason. By the way, I do think that that's kind of a bit of a cringy name in my opinion. Yes, I understand that Minnesota has the likes of Robin Lod and also Timu Puki, but calling yourself Minnesota, not really my style. I'll just stick with calling them the Loons. But the other signings that, of course, was official is RSL signing Greek left back Alessandro Chernis, and this is again a signing that I mentioned in the last News of the Week episode. I don't really know much about him other than the fact that this could be a good depth signing for this RSL team that desperately need help in terms of fullback position, and he also needs some signings to actually get their fans excited for this upcoming season because they've been very quiet in terms of the transfer window and adding players this off season. Now, the defending champion Columbus Crew has announced that they have part ways with Kevin Molino. So, yeah, it's kind of sad to see Hot Boy now no longer with the Columbus Crew. But at the same time, I think that for Kevin Molino, with all the injuries that he's been dealing with, and he's still been dealing with a lot of injuries, even during his time with the Columbus Crew, at least he's able to finish his time with the Crew with a trophy, and now it's going to be interesting to see whether or not if teams are going to get him. Now, in an ideal world, I would really hope that Minnesota United would bring him back because I think that would be a perfect reunion considering what he means to the Loons fan base. But at the same time, I also won't be surprised if he announces his retirement. I mean, he's been a guy that you talk about one of the most cursed player in terms of dealing with injuries. He's been dealing with injuries almost every single season, and it's just kind of getting to a point where when you deal with so many injuries throughout your career, your body's kind of break down, and you might call it a day. So I will not be surprised if Kevin Molino would decide to do that. Especially he's kind of hitting that age where it's kind of around that time where players started to hang up their boots, but mainly because of the fact that Kevin Molino has battled with so many injuries throughout his career. Won't be surprised if he decided to call it a quit after this. And why not? I mean, to go out as a champion, that is obviously one of the most difficult thing to do in a professional career, but this would be a perfect time to do so. Winning MLS Cup, winning the ultimate thing that I wish he would have done with Minnesota United back in 2020 if it wasn't for that certain game against the Seattle Sounders. But I'm happy of him going to Columbus and winning a trophy there on hand. Now, the Columbus Crew has also announced that they have signed Sean Suwatski to a new contract extension. Also, I don't know why I wrote name contract extension there. I think I wrote it so fast that I literally wrote things that didn't even make any sense. So let me change that. Yeah, you're right here. They signed him to a new contract extension, and not a big surprise, but I mean, he's a good depth piece player to this Columbus Crew team, and also a player that came out of the second team of the Columbus Crew. Again, this team, they produce some really good talent from their second team, and it's no surprise why I mentioned it yesterday in my season preview of the Crew. They're very good in terms of in their hands of depth pieces because they have just so much depth and not just any depth, but good depth quality coming off the bench and will easily produce for this Columbus Crew team. And then Charlotte FC have announced that they have officially sold Camille Josviak to La Liga club Granada. I want to know what kind of agent that Camille Josviak has because it's kind of hard to believe that he's actually now going to be joining another top tier team. Well, I wouldn't say Granada is considered a top tier team in La Liga, but to consider the fact that he's joining a team that is in the top tier of Spanish soccer, yeah, I mean after the time where he kind of become a bust at Charlotte FC, and we kind of saw this coming even to the day when they decided to sign him on a DP contract. Yeah, I want to know what kind of agent he has because yeah, this is kind of interesting that after just kind of an underwhelming time with with Charlotte that he was able to get a move with a team in the top league in Europe. But that being said, I think for Charlotte, this is definitely a good news in a way where I'm pretty sure the fans are happy. The fact that they finally let go of Kamil Josviak. I mean, in the case of Karol Świderski, that maybe could be a question because as I mentioned before, Świderski does produce a lot on the attack, and that's going to be something that they're gonna miss. But that being said, for them opening those two DP spot and if especially ending a bad contract in Kamil Josviak, that could definitely open some wiggle room for them to start to spend money, but that's the big question with this team. And if there's anything I know about Charlotte and them owned by David Tepper, yeah, I don't know if that's going to work out for him, especially from what you saw this season regarding with David Tepper and his other team that is playing in the NFL and how it went for them. Now, moving on to the next news. So Leon Flock, unfortunately, he's going to be out for a while with a torn pectoral muscle, also known as a torn pec. And yeah, that's definitely a bit of a setback for him and definitely a brutal setback too, because that definitely sounds like a painful injury to try to come back for. But certainly wish him a speedy recovery, and that that's definitely going to take a bit of a take a bit of a hit in terms of the depth chart that this Philadelphia Union team that has in their depth chart in the midfield. And now moving on in the next news, and now talk about some transfer rumors. So LA Galaxy, they report that they are going to be making a $12.5 million bid to sign Paraguayan for Roman Sosa. So again, this offseason, it's been pretty crazy in terms of what we've seen teams have done in terms of splashing the money and paying $10+ million in terms of signing a new striker. I mean, we already saw with what FC Dallas did with signing Petr Musa from Benfica, and they signed him for $10 million plus $3 million of bonus incentives or performance incentives that is. And it feels like the Galaxy are trying to do the same thing too. Now it's kind of understandable because after losing Chicharito, there is definitely a need for them to replace him and find a new number 9, even though technically they do have a decent number 9 in Dejan Joveljic, though Joveljic was kind of very underwhelming last season. So I'm not surprised that they're trying to find a Chicharito replacement, and we'll see if Roman Sosa is going to be the guy to do so. I mean, if he is going to be the guy to do so, it's not going to be easy, and especially with the amount that the Galaxy are spending, they better hope that Roman Sosa is going to be the guy that could be the answer in that number 9 position for this Galaxy team. Speaking of number 9, so Orlando City, they're looking to sign Atalanta for Luis Fernando Murillo. Now, what's kind of interesting about this is that I wonder if this move is going to all depend on the Duncan Mcguire situation. So, obviously, from what we heard before this big transfer saga to the latest plot twist of Duncan Mcguire and his time with Blackburn Rovers, it's going to be interesting to see if Orlando does keep Duncan Mcguire. Are they still going to go after Atalanta for Luis Fernando Murillo, who he's a really good player. I mean, he did very well his time with Atalanta and even during the World Cup with Colombia. So yeah, I'm interested to see how that's going to be and whether or not are we actually going to see them still pursuing him. I mean, one thing that's also interesting is that they do pursue him. Then they got two really good number nines, so maybe Oscar decided to play two forward up front, or maybe they're thinking the fact that they'll just keep Duncan Mcguire for a bit before in the summer transfer window. That's when they sold him off to somewhere else, and Luis Fernando Murillo will be a perfect replacement for him. Either way, it should be very interesting, and that again, this move really now depends on the latest installment of the Duncan Mcguire transfer saga. And then Joseph Martinez. So is report that he is actually now going to be joining CF Montreal. So this looks like is a move that is going to happen because Joseph Martinez actually have now arrived in Montreal and even pose some picture with some fans that greet him there, and that yeah, it's interesting to see Joseph Martinez now going to Montreal again. It's been kind of an interesting career that Joseph Martinez has had. I mean, with all the success that he has with Atlanta United, I mean, the last couple of years it's been kind of a season. And again, I think mainly the reason why he's been having kind of a meh kind of season and have looked nothing like the Joseph Martinez that we saw during his time with Atlanta. It's that torn ACL injury. Like that torn ACL injury has really devastated his career to a point where I mean he's still good number nine and he still can score goals for you, but he's nowhere near as dangerous as what we seen before, and we'll see whether or not if he can rediscover that form now that he's going to go to Montreal. And if you're Montreal, I think that's a good signing. I mean, getting a guy that is a former MLS Golden Boot winner and a guy that even though he doesn't have as much quality as what we saw a couple of years ago, he's still a very serviceable number nine and also a big name too. I mean, Joseph Martinez is a name that if you're a casual MLS fan, you probably would know the name of Joseph Martinez, even if you only started watching the league a couple of years ago, because he was the guy. Like he was the main man, the big talking point, as considered to be the best number nine in the league, and a guy that we thought at one point was going to maybe even chase down Wando's record for the most goal ever scored by a player in this league. Now, FC Cincinnati, they're also linked with a move of Lucas Orlando from Vasco da Gama. So it looks like we got another player from Vasco da Gama is going to be coming to MLS. I mean, it seems like we have seen a couple of players that have come from that club, and that's one of those clubs where MLS team love to try to use them as a way for them to get some talented player and lure them to come join their team in MLS. But from what I heard, there hasn't really been some positive review about him during his time with Vasco da Gama. In fact, their fans have called him kind of a lazy kind of player and a player that doesn't have a lot of good work rate, which that's kind of interesting to see if that is entirely true, especially now joining a Cincinnati team that he's gonna be definitely be at his best if he want to crack into the starting 11 in this team. But that being said, we'll see whether or not if they will complete this signing. And then moving on into the next news, Sporting KC is report that they're going to sign free agent Memo Rodriguez. So Memo Rodriguez, he's kind of started to become a bit of a journeyman now, kind of started to take the Kai Kamara road where, he's been bouncing around the league, and it seems like Sporting KC is the latest team to do so. I mean, I still remember Memo Rodriguez being a lethal number nine, especially during his time with the Houston Dynamo, where he had 1 year where he still like 14 goals a season. Obviously, he hasn't discovered that good form and been kind of bouncing around the league, and now we'll see him going to Sporting KC, whether or not that, I don't think he's going to be a regular starter. Obviously, Alan Polito is still the regular starter, but, if he can beat the competition of the likes of William Agata or God forbid, even Kyrie Shelton too, which I don't think if Kyrie Shelton is still on this team or not. I mean, he's got a bit of a cult hero with Sporting KC, so I don't expect that he probably is still not on this team anymore. But yeah, it's definitely more forward depth for the Sporting KC side, and again, a guy that I also won't be surprised that it will be short stay with him with Sporting KC before another team is going to give Memo Rodriguez a chance to play in MLS. I mean, he's been playing a lot of team in the Midwest, especially in the Texas region. And then Kellen Rowe have announced that he has retire from his professional career after spending 12 years of that. Obviously, Callum Rowe, it's kind of hard to believe that it's only been 12 years that he's been playing in his professional career. It feels like he's been in this league for a very long time. I mean, I still remember during his time with the New England Revolution and how for him, he had to battle for a lot. Doing his time with the Revs, the Revs were considered to be a very mediocre team prior to what we see them now. But him going to Seattle has definitely changed his fortune, and not to mention playing for his hometown club as well. But yeah, knowing the fact that he kind of shows some signs of decline, especially in the last couple of years, and also not really play for the Sounders a lot. Feels like maybe it's time for him to hang up his boots. And a guy that I still remember, I made a video talking about Kellen Rowe and how he was going to be one of those the guy that was probably the most impressive out of the January camp when he was in the January camp for the U.S. Obviously, that didn't happen, but I still remember that one moment where he was really promising, and I legitimately thought that he was going to be a guy that was going to give chances in the U.S. men's national team. And if you don't know what I'm talking about, this was all the way back in 2017, back in when I still do match vlogs and talk about the San Jose Earthquakes, and even back when I start doing MLS video and mostly focus on the U.S. men's national team. And if you really want to look for those videos I talk about, just go all the way back. I mean, I've it's hard to believe that I've done this channel for as long as it is. That's one of the oldest video I talk about in terms of how I thought for a second Kellen Rowe was going to be a regular starter or even at least be on the national team during the Gold Cup in 2017. And then lastly, Kyle Field will be hosting a Mexico friendly prior to Copa America. So this is kind of like a warm-up match for Mexico before Copa America. And this is kind of interesting for me to mention because I don't think Mexico has ever played at a college football stadium. And I'm also interested to see whether or not they can fill that stadium because Kyle Field is not only one of the biggest stadium in this country, but it's literally one of the biggest stadium in the world. I mean, that stadium could hold 107,000 plus. It can even hold 110,000 plus with standing in Rome, and obviously, we know that stadium always have that have at capacity when Texas A&M is playing. But it'll be interesting to see whether or not it will see the same thing with Mexico, especially playing in College Station, which is kind of not. I mean, it's still near in terms of the metro area around the Texas region, like those three big city in well, those four big city that is with Dallas, Austin, San Antonio, and Houston. But it's again it'll be interesting to see whether they can fill up, and it's also going to be interesting to see whether or not if the U.S. would be playing in college football stadium in some of their future friendly game. I mean, the only time I know the U.S. play at a college football stadium is at Rentschler Field in East Hartford, where UConn, of course, play their football, and they played a lot of games in that stadium too. Most recently, they just hosted a friendly against Germany in that stadium, and I think the reason why they chose that stadium is that it's actually a pretty good fit for soccer, even though it's a college football stadium, and it's also mainly an area where it's able to get the fan base that is from the Northeast region because Hartford is perfectly positioned between the New England region and then the Boston region, and also the New York City region. That is, I mean, just only as NYCFC fans in terms of how they feel of playing in Hartford. I mean, sorry, NYCFC fan, you knew that joke was gonna come up when they decided to play in Hartford in one of the games, and same goes for Toronto FC when they had to use that stadium and make that stadium home when they were not allowed to play in Canada during those COVID shortened season. But there you have it. That is pretty much it in terms of looking at this news of the week episode. As always, let me know in the comments below what do you think of these news, and if there's any news I didn't mention here on the board, let me know in the comments below as always. But until then, hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you do, make sure you guys do like, smash the subscribe button, and yeah, I of course will see you guys next time.